Welcome to the Females Across the Pond and Beyond podcast. Hi, I'm Clara.
Hi, I'm Angie. We're here to share all things email and beyond. We go through the trials and tribulations of running your own business, being your own boss, and sending your own email marketing.
As email marketing experts, we're dedicated to helping small businesses thrive so they can have more freedom in their business.
Ready to get started? Let's dive into the episode.
Hello, welcome. We're going to be talking about striking the right frequency between sending emails. So how often you should be sending emails.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most popular questions I get as an email marketer is how often should I be sending emails? When should I be sending emails? So I know this is like a really hot topic for all business owners and marketers in general, I feel like.
It really, really is. And well, a really good starting point might be to talk about why this is important. Why is it important to think about the frequency of sending emails? So let's start there then. So I guess for us in terms of small business owners and the role of email marketing, we want to be looking at reaching the right people at the right time. And why frequency matters is, well, it's really important to connect with your audience in a way that doesn't annoy them, but really engages them.
Yeah, you kind of have to have a good balance of not being spammy, as people would say, and sending too many emails. But you also don't want to, I guess, not send emails because then your audience will become disengaged if you put too long of a stretch in between not sending emails. So it really is all about your audience, right? Understanding your audience and, how often they want to hear from you, too.
100%. It really is. I mean, if we think about all the different types of businesses out there, like for example, if you are a fashion e-commerce brand and you want to communicate that you have recently launched a new product, you're not going to wait till your monthly newsletter to let people know. You want to get it out there as soon as possible. So understanding your audience is so important because first of all, like how often do people want to be hearing from you? Well, how much content have you got to share? What value can you add? Um, what is it that you want to share with your audience on a regular basis that will add value to their business, add value to their lives? So it's about, yeah, absolutely, Angie. Understanding your audience is like a really, really good step to that. And understanding what their preferences are and,
Mhm.
how they want to interact with your brand, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big theme with email marketing is that it's a lot of things are about your audience, because every list is unique, right? Every list has, unique profiles on it with different people who, might be working moms or they are young, single adults, in college. And all of these different types of people may have different preferences and how often they want to hear or how they want to hear from their favorite brands, whether that's through email marketing or even SMS. So that's why it's really good to find a way to figure out what your audience wants. And I kind of want to go into what are some different ways that we could read the data, right? We can read open rates and go back and see what sort of frequency is working with the data. But I feel like there's other ways that you can ask your audience and gauge your audience for how often they want to hear from you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's ways that you can, yeah, as you say, like in terms of seeing how your audience are interacting with your emails, but you can also ask people, right? You can
Straight
simply,
up.
yeah, you can just ask the question, like we're afraid sometimes to do that as business
Uh-huh.
owners, but actually it's a really simple technique to say, how often do you want to hear from me? And I think the fear is that people think you might unsubscribe by asking that question. Have you come
Hmm.
across that?
No. I mean, I have come across my clients, yes, being scared to just, email their audience very directly and asking questions like this. But I
Mm.
find that every time you do, you get a lot of engagement back, and people are almost really excited that you're actually asking for their input. Um, and you do get them filling out and telling you what their preferences are. Because you can have a manage preference page, that
Mm.
has those different options that you can tag your audience with. So you could send them to a managed preference page or a survey or something like that. And I find that, of course, it's kind of hard to get people's feedback once they're on your list. But there is a good amount of people who will fill out those surveys and will be happy to, and probably even reply back to your email, and say something to
Mm.
you.
And that's amazing when that happens. And actually, it doesn't have to be, it sounds like, is this something really complicated? But actually, you can do it in your onboarding email or you can do it in your
Yeah.
newsletter.
Yeah.
It's so like easy to set up. Like you literally can ask like 2 or 3 questions to find out, how often do you want to hear from me? And then capture that in the sense of, some people might want to hear from you on a fortnightly basis, some might want to hear from you on a monthly basis. Um, and the other way to look at this as well is, well, actually, let's look at what kind of industry
Hmm.
you're in, first of all.
Yeah.
Like, so, I touched on earlier about fashion.
Yeah.
Um, but actually, what's normal, what's kind of, the question we get asked is, how often should I be sending an email to my audience? Well, tell us what industry you're in because
Yeah.
it will really make a difference. If you're like in something kind of fast moving like beauty or fashion, you know, there is an expectation that you are sending things out more frequently.
Oh,
However,
yes.
if you're sending something, I don't know, Angie, let me think, what could be maybe something in the B2B space
Yeah,
where
I
there's
would
a
say service
bigger,
providers probably don't need to be sending
yeah,
as much on a weekly basis. Um,
yeah,
on that note, too, it also depends on what you have coming up, though, because for service
hmm
providers, I always tell my service provider clients, who are about to launch a program, and leading up to that launch or a course or whatever it is, their new offer, and leading up to that launch, we do want to be sending we do want to be kind of ramping up our sends a little bit so that our audience knows something is coming, and we're giving them value and touching base with them before we just unleash the launch on them. So yeah, I guess
mm.
B2B is probably, but other than that, I feel like B2B can definitely get away with maybe 2 cents a month if they wanted to. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And one I think whenever I work with service providers, I think there's like a reluctance there to do more than monthly. And I think if you're
Mm,
starting out and you are completely new to email marketing, try monthly to begin
yeah.
with,
Oh yeah.
like
Hmm.
give it a go, but
Yeah.
actually think about how you can ramp up frequency as you have more to say. So exactly, Angie, you've made a really good point around you might be launching something. It might be that you are transitioning from one-to-one to a course,
Hmm.
or it might be you have a special offer. Like there's things that your audience won't necessarily know. Like don't take for granted they're going to visit your website every, couple of days. We need to be reminding people through email about what we do and the kind of services that we offer.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, it's
and
kind of like how long is a piece of string, but in some
yeah.
cases, I think for industry and like type of business, I think it's really comes down to what do you have to offer? What do you have to talk
Mm,
about?
yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be just sending emails just because it makes you money, because I think
Yeah.
that's the trap that we get into is, ooh, every time I send an email, I make sales. So I just want to send emails like as often as possible. But if you do that and you're just kind of sending emails just because, your audience is going to catch on. They're going to realize
Oh,
that your emails really don't have much to offer in them. and they're going to become disengaged and start to kind of look over you in the inbox if you kind of get too excited with your email sends.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And I think, you know what, if you are sending an email just because you feel you have to, your audience are going to see right through it. And,
Uh-huh.
you know, in effect, you're delivering very little value or any at all, you know, and we advise against that, right? I'm sure you
Of
agree, Angie.
course.
Like, there's no point in sending an email for the sake of it. You need to have value behind that, inside that email. You need to have content that's going to excite, inspire, engage.
Hmm.
So really, you know, when we look at frequency, we want to be looking at what is right for your audience,
Right.
but
Again,
also, what do you have to offer?
yeah. What do you have to offer them? But the good thing is, if you're a company, an e-commerce company, and you want to be sending a weekly email, which I always tell my e-commerce product-based businesses, definitely send at least a weekly email. And then they always get into the trap of, what do I send?
Mm.
And um, I feel like, there is a lot of really great content available to you about your business and how you help your clients and case studies and all of these things that is really interesting content that your audience would like to hear. But you have to kind of go a little deeper into that. You have to do a little bit of research. You have to gather that information and maybe do a little bit of brand identity work. What are our mission? What is our mission? What are our values? But that type of content can really pay off for you. So it also depends on the type of content you are sending, right? Because it's one thing to send weekly emails about here's our sale, here's our sale, here's our sale. But
Mm.
then a whole different thing if you're sending weekly content like, we value or here's our values and this is how it benefits you or you're having this problem and here's what we did to help you solve that problem. So it also depends on the content you're sending, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I have actually seen one of the biggest traps I've seen is that people tend to like send sales type emails consistently.
Yeah.
And imagine if you're receiving that as a
Yeah.
person and you're receiving just sale after sale after sale,
Yeah.
it's going to lose its kind of shine. You know, it's not going to have the kind of impact that you want it to. Maybe in the beginning, but that will tail off. And
Yeah.
eventually you'll see people maybe like, well, disengage certainly, but maybe even unsubscribe,
Oh,
which
yes.
what a shame. You know, you've worked so hard to get that to get that subscriber onto your list. Um, so one of the things to think about is, well, what kind of content are you putting out there to engage your audience? So we're not saying don't do sales because you absolutely need to do those
Yeah.
promo type
Yeah.
emails.
Yes.
But think about maybe, you know, educational type emails. So if you're like
Hmm.
a vegan fashion brand, talk to me about how you make your products. Like, talk to me about alternative leather, you know. I worked with a client a few months ago, and she did a video on grape leather, which I thought was amazing, you know, like
Wow.
how to how to make leather in sustainable way, you know, alternatives to leather. Um, and
Wow.
that for
That's
me was really
amazing.
educational.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, who knew you could make a bag from grape leather? So,
That's
um,
incredible. And like that's the type of stuff too, like as someone who's on maybe your list who I'm not really like a
mm,
big fashion person, I would find that super interesting. I would be like
it-
all over that information. And you might just rope someone like me in with that type of content.
exactly, exactly. So don't forget there are people joining your list and they are on the cusp of buying from you, or they might need more information. They
Oh
might
yeah.
feel that they're not quite there yet. They need to get to know you better. So these types of content, you know, types of emails that we're sending out about more about education, maybe more about the community that you exist in. Maybe you have a loyalty program. Maybe there are different aspects to your brand that you want to talk about. So think about you as a consumer. What would encourage you to engage with a brand beyond the promo type emails? You know,
Yeah.
we want to know about stories from founders. We want to know about stories from service providers, like why did you start your business?
Yeah.
Tell me what you're doing now. What kind of
Hmm.
impact are you having? So all these kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
We want to see more than just the sales type emails that people tend to get stuck and fixated on.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah.
that definitely plays such a big part in the frequency talk too, like we said, because, if you're sending juicy content that is like really engaging, really interesting, really educational, I wouldn't mind a weekly email or maybe even more about that stuff if I feel like I'm getting a lot of value from it or if I'm learning something especially that I'm really, really interested in learning about from an expert. Um, as opposed to, you know, sales promos multiple times a week. Just, you know.
Yeah. And don't forget, during Black Friday, we're all
Ugh.
like, you can get fatigued from sales as
Oh
much as we
yeah.
love a good sale. Like, I love a good sale. Like, you're always going to find something that you're looking for a bargain, and you'll get those sales emails through, but at the same time we can be inundated. So think about
Yeah.
how you can stand out in the inbox by offering something a little bit different,
Oh
and think
yeah.
about your business and why, how are you different from your competitors? What makes you stand out? So yeah, it's all about that content that you are starting with in the first place.
Hmm.
Because yeah, if you rely, the other side of that is, imagine, and I've seen this, and I don't know if you have, Angie, is where service providers or even e-commerce, they're too much on the educational nurturing and not enough on the promo.
Oh
So,
yeah.
so
I
you
always
don't get that right balance.
I think it's funny because I mean, I can only talk for my little small piece slice of, email marketing. But I do find that the clients that I have in my sphere, as far as e-commerce, product-based businesses, they are very focused on the sales and promos. That's when they notice in an email, when they have a sale. As whereas the service providers, they're very focused on just education and connecting, and they have a harder time actually selling. So I always find that's really funny that, oh, if we could just marry the two together, if we could just learn from one another and just start blending both of those, to me, that's a recipe for a beautiful email strategy.
It really is. And you know what? This is actually really simple to resolve. So if you're listening to this and you think, actually, this is, I'm guilty of this, then start thinking about how you can introduce maybe those, promo content through
Yeah.
your schedule.
Yeah. If you're not
Um,
selling, sell.
yeah. I mean, it's that simple. And I think, what could be a good cadence for you? Well, let's say you're sending um let's just keep it simple and say you're sending in one email a week. So maybe switch one of those emails in 4 to sales just to see what happens. And,
Yeah.
really, this kind of boils down to testing and seeing what
Hmm.
works for your audience.
Yeah.
Um, like, we can't say it's exactly this number for every possible business, because it really will depend on a number of things. But what you can tell is, actually, by introducing sales, am I making sales? Am I making sales for my promo content? Am I seeing an increase in my engagement rates, like my opens and my clicks? Have a look over time. Are you seeing an improvement, or are you seeing a downward trend?
Yeah.
Look at your unsubscribe rate as well, right? Are people getting turned off by your content?
Yes, definitely. And I feel like people get a little bit nervous when it comes to looking at the data, and looking at the results, and they're just like, oh, it kind of feels like a lot, because there's a lot of
Mm.
numbers, and you're like, what metrics do I look at? But you kind of hit it. You hit the nail on the head there when you said, just take a look at, your open rates, and is there a trend? So I always tell my clients who are kind of DIYing it, just try to put it on your calendar to pull a report of your sends from the month, or maybe even 60 days, really depending on how many emails you've sent, right? Because we want to like a good chunk of emails, because we want to do see if there is any sort of trend. And then yeah, just take a look and run down and see how the open rate is going throughout the month or throughout the 60 days of your sending. Is it going up, or is it going down? It can be very simple like that. Same with your click rate. So to just kind of gauge how the engagement is. And then same with your placed order rate. Um, if I'm sending more emails, does my place order rate go up? Or are people kind of dropping off and not buying as much as I send, I guess, throughout the month? So it I think, yeah, it can be a little intimidating, but really it's just take a look at the numbers and if you see a trend, trust that trend and make decisions accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we want to be basing our decisions as business owners on the data in front of
Oh
us,
yeah.
not how, like
Not how we
there are
feel.
things. Yeah, I mean, in business, there are things you might want to base your gut instinct on,
Hmm.
but when it comes to email marketing, the beauty of it is actually what I really enjoy is you can see the results almost instantly. Go back to an email you sent last week, see how it did, and see how, like exactly as Angie, you've said, is like look at that trend over time. And as service-based businesses as well, you won't necessarily have the same metrics to look at in terms of
Hmm.
revenue, but you could look
Yeah,
at how many people have booked a call with you, for example. How many
right.
discovery calls do you have booked? Um, are people even clicking through on your email? Are you getting the content right? So yeah, I mean, frequency and content kind of go hand in hand, as
Oh
you
yeah.
might have realized through this podcast that it's so important to have the right content in the first place, to have the right balance. But also, based on your industry, think about like what are the norms for your industry versus like how often you want to communicate. Um, there are actually, Angie, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. There are companies that I follow that send daily emails.
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Um, good for them. If they can send daily emails and they don't have a large drop off, their unsubscribe rates are above or at their median peers, or at their benchmarks, and they see good engagement and they get sales from that, then good for them. And if they can handle that, I think another real thing is not a lot of businesses can support daily email sends. That's a lot of work.
Mm,
So it takes, a lot of time. But I think it's most important for those businesses, if you're ever going to think about sending that much, to give people the option to opt out of those daily emails.
yeah.
Because there are going to be a bunch of people on your list who aren't going to like that. Um, but what do you think of that? What do you think of daily sends?
It's a really interesting one. And anyone that's new to email marketing, I wouldn't say go daily because
No.
there's a lot you need to figure out, first of all, as we've discussed, your content
Yes.
strategy, understanding what your own performance is, what your audience want from you. But I think, yeah, some of the kind of thought leaders in business I do follow and do have daily emails. And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you have to be of a certain size to be able to do that. And you have to have really valuable content in order
Yeah.
to get someone to get into the habit of opening your email every day and cut through all the noise. Um, and I think, yeah, certain brands can get away with that because they've built up this reputation over time. But yeah, you're right, Angie. It takes work to do that every day, and this isn't for the solopreneur or the small business because you need the resource to generate that. Um, and I think for some businesses it can be detrimental. Like if you're sending
Yes.
too many emails, it can be damaging. You could lose a lot of, people will unsubscribe.
Well, yeah,
So
you know
it's a
that we get
yeah,
unsubscribes from every email. Every email you send, you're going to get unsubscribed. So if you're sending daily
yeah.
emails, you better have a robust growth strategy going for you.
Exactly, exactly. You know what? Like we will do a podcast on unsubscribes because that is a big topic. But
Mm,
ultimately, if someone unsubscribes, then it's a good thing because you end up having a group of people that you communicate to that want to hear from you. So it's as long as your unsubscribe rate is, it's even lower now, below 0.5%, I believe.
Right.
The rules are changing, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're tightening up on unsubscribes, Google and Yahoo. But yeah, we want to make sure that we are, this content point we're making here is even more important as we
Yeah.
go through the changes that are coming up with Google and Yahoo. One of the things we haven't mentioned, Angie, is actually around like seasonal
Mm.
type industries that, it might be that certain times of the year, like Valentine's
Yeah.
Day is coming
Oh, yeah.
up.
Hmm.
So if you're a greetings card company, like you might be sending more, your frequency might go up during this
Right.
time of year.
Yeah, as it should. I used to work for a outdoor garden company. So springtime, March, April, when people were buying their flowers, of course we were ramping up sends as much as we could because we knew that people were looking for our emails because they were ready to buy their flowers and plant them in their garden. So it was kind of like a green light for us um, to do that. And we didn't see, much unsubscribes because of that. So definitely take into consideration the cycle, your sales periods, right? Or the cycle of your selling.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it makes a difference if you are, if Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, these types of seasonal events are important to your business, then yeah, you might want to think about ramping up the frequency in the run up to those key dates.
Yeah.
However, if you're like in a space where you're selling products that are like quite high value, and maybe kind of infrequently, then they're less relevant to you. So don't necessarily feel you have to jump on the bandwagon because everyone else is. Think about what's
Right.
right for your business and your audience. Um, so yeah, there's some really good like tips here for small business owners to think about. One of the biggest traps we've talked about is make sure you get your content right, but the types of content you're sending are, the balance is right between promo, educational, community. Think about like, how you can kind of get that more evenly weighted. Think about testing and looking at results of your performance to date, like as we've suggested, pulling off 2 months of data and looking at, hopefully things are pointing in an upward direction, but if they're not, then it gives you the opportunity to change things.
Hmm.
Think about the industry you're in, really understand your audience, and like we said, don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions.
Yeah.
What is it they want to know about you? um yeah, I think that's it in terms of our tips. What do you think, Angie? Have we covered everything?
I think we've covered. I think everything that you just pointed out is definitely what you should take into consideration when you're thinking about how many emails should I send. And also, as with anything, try different things. Maybe take a month where you send 2 emails a week. You don't have to do it, ongoing. But if you really want to see what that does and you're willing to, okay, we might get more unsubscribes. We're okay with that. We just want to see how our audience reacts. Or if you're a service-based business and you've been sending 1 email a month and you want to up that to 2 emails a month, try it for a couple of months. And again, go back to the data and rely on the data to make your final decisions for you and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much value in testing and like learning about what's right for your business. So we'd absolutely love to hear your stories around email frequency. What have you tried? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? So yeah, please get in touch. Drop us a note. We'd love to hear your stories. Um,
Do we want to wrap up with some client wins that we've had
yeah. Have you got
recently?
anything that comes to mind?
I'm like, now I have to think of something. No,
Let me
I
think.
did have a good client when, I work with an e-commerce product-based business, and we've been trying to implement more plain text style or little letter style. They're
Mm,
not all plain text. We have the logo and, some other photos in them. So not technically plain text email, but more of a letter style from the CEOs. And
Nice.
we sent a coupon just to one segment of the list with this letter style email, and also informing them of some updates they recently installed or had put in Afterpay, one of those
Mhm.
installments where you can kind of pay over 6 weeks, I guess, a period of time. So we wanted to put that information in, and we wanted to offer them a coupon, and we did it letter style. And that got a really good response, really good click rate. On our hyperlinks, I didn't have any images or photos or anything.
Amazing.
And we had a really good placed order rate too on that. So I think the audiences love to be informed of what's going on in your business, what updates you're making to help their buying experience and make their life easier. So I just put in my notes to this client, anytime that we have updates, let's send them a letter style email and let them know what we're updating them about or what we're doing in our business.
That's amazing. I love that you have tried text only, and like,
Yeah.
I think sometimes people feel like, oh, but it must have images, like they're, part of my branding. And actually just give it a go, just try it. That's the one thing that we encourage you to do, is
Yes.
try text only for your business. Just try it for one email, see what happens.
Hmm.
It could be that it's the one email that cuts through and gets you a sale. So yeah, give it a go, see what happens.
What about you? What
I
client
was
win or story do you have for us?
Yeah, I was just thinking about a client uh I was working with recently, who she um we were seeing like a slight decline in some of her newsletters,
Hmm.
and we were thinking,
In
what
open
what's
rate or click rate or
in both. Yeah, we're
both?
just
Okay.
more so click rate, more so
Okay.
click rate. And I realized, like, looking back at what works for her previously, or what has worked really well, is people were clicking on her um personal LinkedIn and Twitter, and
Hmm.
basically they wanted to know more about the founder. And one
Mm.
thing I wanted to try, and it worked really, really well, was I asked her to do some videos, just simple videos on an iPhone. And she did that, and they were literally like 2 or 3 minutes long, talking about a specific issue that her audience are facing. And we put that in the email quite high up, and it just drove such high click rates. Like, it was the
Wow.
most clicked on link in the email. Um, and it just goes to show, as founders, like, I know that some founders like to be behind the scenes, but I actually think people want to know about founders, and the more you can kind of tell your story through emails, the better. People are curious as to why you set up your business. They want to know more about who you are. So I think video content, or some kind of content directly from the founder, can be really impactful and engaging for your audience.
Yes.
So
That's
yeah, it
incredible.
worked a treat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
And
encourage you to do that. Try
yeah.
it.
Yeah, that is so great. And kudos to you for going back to the data and going back to those emails that got high click rates, or to see what people were clicking on, right? We kind of just talked about this a little bit with the frequency, is that it's in the data. Your audience is always telling you what they're interested to learn more about. And yeah, kudos to you for going back to that and noticing that, if they're clicking on your social media handles, then they want to know more about you. So let's give them what they want.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, the gold is right in front of you. Like,
Yeah.
people are telling you what they're doing by
Oh,
their
yeah.
click action. So,
Mhm.
follow up, like, do more of that. Do more of that kind of content that people want to hear about. And like, we got video content produced, and it's something now that I always encourage founders that I work with to do any kind of video content. And I have worked with some really introverted founders, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I know
Yeah.
that some people feel uncomfortable about video,
Oh, yes.
but it could be, and this is another client that that actually shared with me that she didn't want to be on the camera, on video. So she actually filmed herself making soap, the product,
Oh,
and that
beautiful.
was amazing.
Yes.
You could be creative about how you show up on video. It doesn't have to be you talking to the camera. You can actually be demonstrating how you make your product, which is so cool as well. So
Yeah,
there's so many
always,
ways to show up, right?
yeah, always create content what works for you, and ease into email marketing too. You don't have to go all in, with it and sharing your
Exactly.
story. And hopefully it gets easier as time goes on and you start to do it more. Um, but that's brilliant. That's such a great share. Thank you. So,
Oh, no worries. No worries.
all right.
Well, I think we have going to wrap up now for the session, but thank you so much for listening. And yeah, do share your stories on email frequency, drop us a note. The details are in our show notes, and catch us for the next podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You've just listened to Females Across the Pond and Beyond podcast with your hosts, Clara and Angie. If you like our content, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on the platform of your choice. Is there something you want to hear about for our next episode? Email us at femalesacrossthepond@gmail.com to let us know. Until next time.